Area of Leaders. I'm your host, Danger Mouse. Welcome to the Weekend Roundup, episode 92. Let's be honest, we're all hopeless addicts for this sport. And this week, the UFC took us down to Miami for our vice. They gave us UFC 327 Prochazka versus Ulberg, a card I was hoping to score high on, but I knew could also be a bust. So I hopped onto my cigarette boat and headed down to Florida, and now I'm sat here wearing an Armani suit, a t-shirt and no socks, and I'm ready to talk some fights. The question was, were we going to get uppers or downers in this deal? Time to find out, but this was a case too big to handle on my own. So I better call him my partner. He's not from New York, but he's still the Tubbs to my Crockett, which is kind of fitting given the black mood he's been in lately. I'm dragging him away from a marijuana case, or is that a case of marijuana that I'm dragging him away from? He's our man in the Midwest. It's Lazybed. How you doing, mate?
Well, I got a large mustache on my face, and you can sit on it because I feel like Tom Selleck, ladies. Let's go. Let's get this thing going. I don't even know what the fuck I'm talking about.
We're not in Hawaii yet. All right. Next up, all the way from California, our Chicano connection is our very own Elvis, which is a joke that's going to go over a lot of heads.
Watch out for Elvis. Elvis is my security alligator.
Maybe even his, and that's not even a height joke. He's very capable of a snappy comment, and he might just want to bite my head off for this intro. It's our pal No Special. How you doing, Austin? You ready to get this show on the road?
Oh, yeah, man. I had a great time despite what some of the other panelists may think. And you know what? Hey, I'm always happy to talk fights, regardless of what time of day it is. And, as long as I got a drink in my hand.
As for you lot listening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave us a comment, or maybe our next drugs bust will be at your house. Okay. Let's get into our first case file, brought to us by a veteran on his last job. Now, some people say that 42 is old, some say it's the meaning of life. Whichever way you want to look at it, Cub Swanson certainly brought it last night against Nate Landwehr when he derailed the train in just over 4 minutes of the first round, giving him the most knockdowns in featherweight history. I thought Cub might be making a mistake with this fight. He'd had the opportunity to walk away from the fight game with a fight of the night win against Billy Quarantillo, but he just couldn't resist stepping in one more time. And boy, did he step up with the perfect swan song fight to retire on. The end of an era, the last of the WEC Warriors, and the UFC gave him a great retirement reel send-off. Austin, why don't you take the first bite at this one? Thoughts on the fight, Cub's career, and maybe something about Nate Landwehr, who has now not only lost his last 3 fights, but been knocked out in all of them too. Take it away, man.
I see. Elvis comments are getting to me. But no, man. Here's the thing. I would have preferred Cub done it in California. He's from SoCal to begin with, so I mean, it would have been fitting for him to be at home when he did his final fight for the UFC. But beggars can't be choosers, and he was given an opportunity to kind of have a send off in Miami, and it was to be fair to Nate. He may have been finished in his last couple, but he's not a guy who gets destroyed outright in a lot of his fights. He usually kind of gets bumped, down a couple of times, or just kind of gets knocked about in the cage, and then finds a way to kind of either bring the fight to his opponent, or what's the saying? Whoop my ass, see what happens, right? But he was in here. He was brought like a lamb to slaughter. He knew what the assignment was, and I think he'd even say it too. Like Nico Price was for Robbie Lawler. The difference being is that Cub was that dude who was still capable in this division, and I think that's the thing that we all forget. Like Cub was always a good fighter, man. Like there are fucking scalps on his resume that many people would kind of have to take a second look at. Like, how the fuck? What? You got the fucking former lightweight champion? You got the former interim lightweight champion on your fucking resume? Holy shit, dude. I mean, he is a vet that you should never, ever forget. And that's the truth of his career. You remember some of his fights as kind of like being lackluster or some, very destructive losses, but he was a guy who was always game. And that's a vet that deserves respect. Like if you can always remember him, be like, a name from old where you can be like, every time you tune in, you're going to be, surprised or, entertained. That's the kind of game that, he always had. And he never really disappointed. And that's the thing that you can look at Cub Swanson and think like, if anyone fucking deserves it, it's him. As for the fight, Cub basically just baited and just allowed himself to kind of sit in this moment and then just find counters and just never let off the gas pedal once he found his opening. Nate, for a good momentum of the round, basically kind of played on the outside, didn't really chase Cub, which was probably the smart thing. He knew he was going to get countered because he wasn't the better striker. You could see Nate kind of like putting together like a small little momentum of, offense, but not really committing to it, which was probably, something that was going to end up being to his detriment later. But he had a game plan that probably was going to be executed in the later rounds, But Cub basically said, hold my beer, and just sat on one counter and then just continued to unload and then took his foot off the gas pedal, came back, found another counter, took a couple other additional strikes to him, and then you dropped him. And that was the thing, is that once you saw Cub just like flow state, it was just over. I knew it was going to be like one of those moments that we saw back in the day where it's just like him just looking at his opponent's hands down like, oh, you're going to get back up, bitch? Like, classic Cub. And that was the thing. I think you kind of looked at this fight and you're like, all right, I see what we're doing here. It's fine. People may have had their reservations, but I knew from the beginning. That's why I picked first round KO for Cub.
Damn you. I picked second round. I was kind of praying that Landwehr would last it out, but he couldn't quite manage it. Lazy, hopefully you enjoyed the scrap and Cub's final performance. So what do you want to say on this one?
Oh, I fucking loved it. I absolutely fucking loved it. First things first, the WEC forever. Blue mats forever. WEC never die.
Yeah.
That's first and foremost. Although the stat is going around that this was the final guy from the WEC still competing. That's not actually true. Final guy still competing in the UFC, if you don't count Ronnie Yaya, who's been inactive for like 2 years, but is technically still on the roster. So he's still around. And then also you have several other WEC holdovers that are competing in other organizations around the world. But nevertheless, I liked that statistic, and I thought that was a nice caveat for them to put on this fight and to give him, as it has his final dance. It's a good title and honor to bestow on Cub, because Cub is a very, very deserving guy to have been given this opportunity, which is really, in my personal opinion, maybe the best retirement ever in UFC history. It doesn't get much better than being given an opportunity to go out there in your final fight in front of your wife and kids, your kids who are now finally old enough to know what their dad's doing and what their daddy does. But to be able to go out there in front of your wife and kids in somewhere nice like a Miami where the crowd's hot, everyone's fired up, style on a dude, absolutely fucking style on a guy. In Nate Landwehr, who I will say is, I wouldn't put him in the same ilk as a Nico Price. I think Nate Landwehr is still a serviceable fighter. So to go out there and look as good as Cubby did, probably the best he's looked in over a decade, because man, he look fast last night, crisp, sharp, just everything you want, doing whatever he felt like, literally in the flow state, in the zone, as you guys pointed out. But to do all that and go out on top like that, so to speak, and be given a video package, like they really did Cub right. Family front row, front and center, next to the president, whether you like it or not, they were there. A little bit of showtime for them. So it was really awesome to see, because Cub is a guy who, like many fighters, they didn't necessarily come from the best place growing up. Usually, if you're willing to cage fight in front of the world in your underwear, you've been through a couple of things. It's not typically the sport you get into if you had a privileged upbringing, so to speak. So to go from where he started his young career as kind of a troubled youth, just looking for an outlet, and to make the name that he made for himself, here we are 22 years after he began his pro career, and he finishes with a win, looking fantastic in doing so. It's just a very rare thing we don't often get to see in MMA. So yeah, you couldn't be more happy for the guy, and he's got life kind of set up for him now as he transitions from being a fighter, because he's got his gym, Bloodline Combat, baby. One of the best gyms going right now in MMA. Several guys in the UFC, many guys on the regional scene. So Cub's really got a lot going good for him right now. Happy for him. He's in a really great place. Nate Landwehr aside, we've mentioned the skid that he's on. Things not looking good for him. He is 37 years old, I believe. So it's a bit of a tough situation for Nate Landwehr, but I think if he's willing to continue fighting, he's obviously a guy that the UFC has a soft spot for. I think they'll probably keep him around for at least one more. And he's definitely got a place and a home in some other organizations like a BKFC or something like that, should he want to, because the guy's box office, he's money. Fans love him for his personality, win or lose. So worst case scenario, they could put one of those little trains inside of the UFC Apex like they have in the shopping malls, and Nate the Train could he could be the engineer, the conductor of the train. Choo choo.
Very cruel, very cruel. The other funny stat I heard about Cub Swanson was Rosas Jr. I can't even think of the guy's first now. The guy with the huge chin. He actually, Cub actually started fighting in the UFC or in MMA at any rate before he was even born.
Yep.
That's just crazy. That's absolutely crazy.
I hate that stat. That makes me sad.
Just makes you feel old. That's all. All right. Next up, we had a fight that may need internal affairs to look at. We're not going to spend much time on this other than to label it as one of the worst fights of the year. Comparable to MVP versus Sam Patterson just a few weeks ago. Two guys who were scared of each other's power. At light heavyweight, Dominic Reyes versus Johnny Walker. I cannot tell a lie. I was gobsmacked when Reyes' arm was lifted in victory. And I think a lot of the crowd I was watching with were just as surprised as me. Lazy, very quickly, who did you have winning this travesty of a fight?
Oh, sorry. I was doing a Bing rip.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, really one of the worst fights of all time. We keep saying that lately. It seems like every card anymore has one of these. This was the one for this card. Very forgettable. Very. It was an obvious case of two guys who could both hit hard, but know that they can't absorb a shot, so they weren't willing to engage. It was just not fun. It was not enjoyable. They've received plenty enough criticism by now, so I'm not going to go too hard on it. But it's shitty because if that's the performance that you were going to have, it's like you should have given somebody a heads up, because that fight definitely did not warrant a main card spot. And there was other people out there that were going to be willing to show out and put it on the line that would have been more deserving of that slot had we have known how this fight was going to play out. So it just kind of sucks that I can understand why they both wanted a safe performance, and God, was this a safe performance? But it kind of robbed the viewer of having a better time on the main card.
Yeah, just before the fight, they were showing Johnny Walker practicing spinning hook kicks on Eric Nixick. So I don't know what that was all about.
Lies. That's what it was.
Yeah. But anyways, same question, I guess, Austin, and just keep it short, please.
Here's the thing, man. I kind of think that they both kind of saw the writing on the wall as like loser kind of gets knocked down to never really contend for anything again, because Reyes was like on a 3-fight win streak before facing Ulberg, right? Even if it was against, questionable competition on the way up again. But I mean, Johnny Walker's kind of like that dude who has like a social credit score where it's like because he's a goofball and he's entertaining whether he wins or loses, he kind of gets the benefit of the doubt. Ray is not so much because he was expected to win, right? So I think that kind of, I mean, not expected, but still, like he had been the better technical fighter as of late. And I think we should start implementing a social credit score for fighters where you could demote them based on their performances and whatnot, but that kind of leads into people being dicks and whatnot. So I don't know if that's a great idea, but it's one of those things where it's like I think like Lacey was saying, they both had reasons to kind of fight the way they did, and because they were given the opportunity on this main card to give such a shitty performance, I think we should be able to demote them from being on the main cards in future fights. But that's just me. Other than that, I think it was just terrible. Two men, like you guys said, afraid of actually getting hurt and being made fun of the next day. That is what it is.
Great. All right, then going from what people were hoping would be fight of the night to what actually was the fight of the night. At heavyweight, featuring veteran Curtis Blaydes against loudmouth and some would say obnoxious relative newcomer Josh Hokit, his third UFC fight, I believe. I didn't listen to the pre-fight chatter, but from what I heard, Hokit had said so much shit about Blaydes that if he lost this fight, he was going to be done. As the kids these days say, all his aura would have disappeared if Blaydes had beaten him. But this was a war. I heard DC on commentary calling it the greatest heavyweight fight of all time. MMA Guru says it's probably the best UFC fight of all time. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't. But Austin, I don't think so. But this has to be in the running for the fight of the year, if nothing else. I've never seen a heavyweight fight like that one. Two guys throwing heat, eating shots, and showing incredible cardio and heart. The numbers look like a lightweight fight. Between them, they threw an incredible 564 head strikes. These guys threw over 200 strikes per round. And just because I don't want to be dead wrong by Daz, they actually only threw 193 in round two. But I don't think we really need to be too picky about that. I did have Hokit in this fight. I know ex-American football players can be a little bit chinny, but he's young, and I couldn't help notice his wrestling pedigree, and he's just a great athlete for a man of his size. He's fast, he moves well, and his hands are like lightning, which is something both myself and Lazy commented on in a chat room somewhere. His post-fight interview with Bisping was perhaps surprisingly restrained. Maybe he did what Dana said about his media performances and decided to tone it down, or maybe that was all he had the energy for after that fight. Whatever the case, he walked away with the win and both fight of the night and performance of the night bonuses. Oh yeah, and he's going to be fighting Derrick Lewis on the White House card in the summer. So Austin, I'm sure you're a huge fan of Josh Hokit now. What do you think of the fight? How do you rate it as far as greatest ever fights go? Heavyweight at that weight class or in any nature?
It's not in my top 10 at all. I'm sorry. It's not. I'll give you one better, Mouse. If you remember back in the day when heavyweight was good. Mark Hunt versus Antonio Bigfoot Silva, right? Super Samoan and the Bigfoot basically went to a draw, right? And that was over 5 rounds. And that had a lot of technique, a lot of actual skill displayed. And this had none of that. And I think it's the thing, man. Like, if you like Josh Hokit, I can't really blame you. He's a small heavyweight that should probably be fighting at light heavyweight, if I'm being honest, because he's not huge for either weight class. He's even probably on the smaller side on the heavyweight, right?
He's about 233 pounds, I believe they said he was in the cage. I
mean, his height, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I wondered if he could make light heavyweight or not.
I think he could. He just doesn't want to cut the weight, which is smart for him because he's doing, again, what Delchin Almeida did, where he just decided to stop cutting weight to 205 because the division was what it was. Like, it was kind of jumbled at the top. So he said, I'll just go up to heavyweight and out wrestle these guys. He's doing the wrestling with striking and then doing bad striking because he's got decent enough cardio. Like, if you watch some of those combinations, he's literally just standing flat-footed in front of Curtis Blaydes. And for some reason, Curtis Blaydes was so aghast that someone was standing in front of him throwing a 20-punch combination that he was just... he physically backed up to the cage and was just like, no, he's not going to do this, right? Just like... I'm yelling at the screen, Curtis, circle, cover up, do something. He's beating the shit out of you, circle. And then Curtis would come back and just clinch with him because I think what it was is that he probably got gas just from the adrenaline dump in the first exchange. Because he would have moments when he would actually hit Hokit and Hokit would just kind of play it off. And then he'd hit Hokit again and Hokit would just like, oh shit, that's a heavyweight hitting me. And that's not even with good boxing. And, for Blaydes' credit, he should have been knocked out like 5 different times and he wasn't. And he just kind of kept fucking rolling with it. And the thing with Hokit is that it's not so much power that he has. It's not even accuracy. It's just volume. It's a Nate Diaz effect. It's the Diaz brothers effect where he's just throwing fucking 30 punches to your 5, right? And if he lands one, he's going to land another. He's going to land 5 more behind that. He's going to keep landing until you stop. And that's what he was trying to implement in this fight. The difference was that he just didn't give a fuck about his own defense. I don't think he ever has. He got caught this time, and he was getting caught several times. The problem was that Blaydes was too fucking tired and gassed and beat up to actually put on an actual decent counter performance. And when he tried to wrestle, Hokit was just fighting his way back up because he's a smaller man. If you've ever watched college wrestling, this looks like one of those matches where the big guy weighs closer to 260 to 280 on the night of the match, and the smaller guy can sometimes, because heavyweight's weird, you'll have guys who are like 225, 230, like Hokit is, and they'll be competitive and beat the bigger guys because the big guy doesn't know what to do because the little guy's fucking running around him, and he doesn't need to be super big. He just needs to be strong enough and skilled enough to get his opponent off his front foot and get to the takedown. That's what Josh Hokit did. He just literally was like, all right, big guy, boom, 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 went for the double leg, would take him down, and then just get, put in a position to kind of dominate. Curtis Blaydes, being the vet that he is, knows how to survive that, and he barely did that this fight. And then I think the thing that sucked about this was like, okay, now he has nowhere to go. Either and they're giving him a fucking easy fight in Derrick Lewis too. So I was like, they're setting him up for so much success that it's going to be funny when he fails because he was barely like a fucking 2-punch combination away from fucking getting fucking like deaded in this fight. But it was too fucking, like, you could hear Curtis Blaydes, like he was so drained of energy, like he could not even muster up like damaging offense. That's why it was like when it landed, Hokit just kind of like would like play it off until the second punch would come in and surprise him. And that was the thing that kind of was like annoying to me because I'm like, you knew who he was going into this fight. You guys should have at least started right off the bat either with heavy wrestling or looked to like counter with like outside boxing, but they didn't even do that. They were just like taken aback by the fact that Hokit was actually just going to go blitz against this bigger heavyweight and did the thing that he was going to do to most of his other, like he did every other opponent. I just, deserving fight of the night, yes. Not performance of the night. That was fucking bullshit.
I was very happy. I believe it's earned me quite a lot in our fantasy MMA league.
I know it did, man.
Talking about his defense there, you reminded me. In the third round, I think Hokit got jabbed in the face twice, and then his corner shouted at him, move your head. And he slipped the next punch, so he has the ability. He just chose not to bother her, probably because Curtis wasn't hurting him that badly at that point, I suppose. But
yeah.
Anyway, Lazy, I knew you had at least a few kind words about Hokit last night. So thoughts on him and what's next for Blaydes? Is he now going to become the gatekeeper for the heavyweight top 5?
Well, first thing, speed kills. Speed fucking kills, dude. Like, this fight was a living, breathing example of that especially at heavyweight, or should I say primarily at heavyweight, speed is your best friend. Speed and cardio, because like Austin pointed out, this was Curtis Blaydes, pardon the phrasing here, this was Curtis Blaydes getting buzzsawed. He got buzzsawed by Josh Hokit. It was an overwhelming onslaught. It was a tornado of activity. And one, that's not something we usually see in this weight class. Two, if we do see it, it's usually not something that can be sustained. And while Hokit's gas tank did falter a little bit too, for the most part, man, he was able to kind of just do this and continue doing it. He has the gas tank that we thought Steven Asplin has. So pretty remarkable fucking shit. It just off of that. But I do want to point out the fact that quite early in this fight, and this has now been confirmed by Mike Bond, Curtis Blaydes had his orbital fractured and his nose. Both of them fucking cracked. Not broken, but fractured. So I'm sure pretty quickly into this fight and early into this fight, Blaydes' gas tank and his cardio was being sapped from a source other than his own. Like the injuries were taxing him. Had that not happened, maybe this fight plays out differently, but that really doesn't matter because it did fucking happen, and it happened because Josh Hokit,
punched him in the
was
face.
able to come out there with that blazing hand speed that me and you, Mouse, both touched on last night. And it's kind of a crazy comparison, and I'm not comparing them in any other realm whatsoever. But when it comes to the hand speed alone, Josh Hokit very much reminds me of Cain Velasquez at heavyweight. That ability to just put a fucking pace on your opponent and blister them. Like he's not gonna end your night with one shot. That doesn't seem to be his style. But bro, dude, can he fucking put it on you? It's really incredible. I don't like the guy, or I didn't like the guy very much, but after last night, I have to at least respect that about him. And I will say, to kind of echo something that Mike Heck's been kind of harping on since last night, I think that Dana White or someone at the UFC got into Hokit's ear after this week of media and kind of said, dude, you got to tone this shit down. Like, it's all good and well to have a fucking character and to be doing your shtick and doing your thing, but you can't be doing it how you're fucking doing it, brother. Like, you got to tone it down a little bit, because that post-fight speech, while it was racy and it was him doing his little gimmick, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't really that bad at all. And, it felt kind of like he sort of got the memo a little bit, or somebody gave him the memo. So if he can do that, and if he can maintain that level of Hokitness, I could tolerate this guy. And he's really a pleasant addition to this heavyweight division, because this kind of hybrid cruiserweight sort of heavyweight that comes in about at the 230-pound mark, has cardio, has speed, it's a real problem. It really is. And this just goes to prove once again that anyone with any decent lick of athleticism that could come in and fight at heavyweight can probably have some success. Like, that division is wide open, because while everyone keeps pointing to the fact that Josh Hokit was quote unquote in the NFL, the guy never made it off of a practice squad. He never made it to an active roster. So we've had numerous other heavyweights from the NFL that had far more successful football careers than he did. This is just kind of a symptom of where the heavyweight division is at. And if you have some athleticism, you're going to have success. And I feel like we said this exact same thing about Hokit when he came off Contender, and it's just being proven over and over again.
Yeah, for sure. The thing is, if he fights like that every time, he doesn't need a gimmick.
It is your gimmick.
Exactly.
Imagine that. Fighters letting their fighting do the ducking.
I know, shocking. All right, onto the co-main at light heavyweight, Azamat Murzakanov versus Paulo Costa, where we will undoubtedly be investigating Paulo Costa's secret juice supplier. After failing to make any headway, Austin's leaking, or squeaking, or laughing, I'm not sure.
Sorry.
After failing to make any headway at middleweight, Costa decided to try out the light heavyweight division. To be more accurate, Costa was returning to light heavyweight because he'd fought there once before against Marvin Vittori, when Paulo Pasta, as Austin liked to call him, couldn't be bothered to make weight. But that's neither here nor there, because this time Costa did make weight, and he looked pretty damn good too. He mostly made Murzakanov look old, fat and slow, which he kind of is. And Costa was able to stay out of trouble in round one, dead a close round two, but Paulo was not going to be denied. he repeatedly landed heavy kicks to Murzacanov's body, and it looked as if he maybe broke his arm when he tried to block one of them. Lazy, rather fittingly, you get to talk about Paulo Costa first. Yet to get to. The light heavyweight division is a very interesting place at the moment. If Costa takes Murzacanov's place on Tuesday, he'll be ranked 6th. So thoughts on the fight, Costa's performance, and what's next for him? I kind of want to see him against Khalil Roundtree next. That would be a really fun fight.
Chad Costa mogged the fat Russian. That's what went down. Really, like, this fight was kind of 2026 in a nutshell, if you ask me, when it comes to the UFC. Who would have thought that in the year 2026, Paulo Costa would be in like career form, looking like he's in his prime, and Israel Adesanya would be completely washed up. Like, it's the damnedest thing. It's the craziest fucking thing. But I said it, and it's true. He looked the best he's ever looked. I think this was probably Paulo Costa's best win in his entire career. I genuinely think that. Took the O of a guy who was 16-0, who had been sparking out everyone he faced, and did so in pretty fucking spotless, flawless fashion. He did get hit a couple of times. The second round, it looked like he was kind of taking things off a little bit, like maybe he took a round to rest, and he got cracked, a couple of times in that round, but wasn't really showing the damage. Gas tanks, always questionable with Paulo, but up at 205, man, he looked great physically, of course. He's a specimen when he gets off the bus. Looked great come fight time, and he held up. The cardio did hold up. He still had plenty to go, plenty of secret juice in the third round when he closed things out, when he fucking head kicked Murzakanov 10 times in a fucking row, which was a smart game plan. I'm not sure. I think it was either the broadcast or one of the watch-alongs I was watching. They pointed it out. Even if you didn't connect with one of those head kicks, you're still dead in that left hand every time you throw your right high kick. And that's Murzakonov's number one weapon. So keep smacking that arm with the kicks. He kicked him like I said, like 10 times in that third round. Finally, it paid off. Kind of a weird KO. Not that I'm not questioning it all. I think it was completely justified. I don't think it was an early stoppage, but just the way he fell, it was just kind of bizarre, a little bit slow, slightly delayed.
Like a tree falling, wasn't it?
Yeah. But slowly. Not like instantaneous. Yeah, it was peculiar. But Paulo Costa, man, I think that he really does deserve some credit here. And I'm not used to saying that. I'm used to shitting on him and taking credit away from him. But in this instance, I feel like you did the right thing. You finally made the move up to 205, the dedicated, intended move up to 205. You made weight. You looked really good. Like you were unranked in the division. They give you the number 6 guy who, like I said, was undefeated. You go out there and you virtually beat his ass, and you come away mostly unscathed. And Mouse, you said it yourself. He now finds himself in a very interesting place because regardless how things play out at 205, he's right there in the mix. If Hamzat comes up, he's got a history of chirping back and forth with Hamzat, depending on how things shake out later in our discussion or how things shook out with what happened in the main event of this card. Like, he could find himself in that equation with one of those guys. It's just Costa finds himself suddenly in a very good spot, and having gone from, kind of under a bit of public scrutiny to now kind of being a public darling once again. And the funniest thing in this whole scenario, and this will be the last thing I say on this one, is, and this is regardless of your political allegiances in life, or which side of the fence you fall on, it was funny that last night, literally like at the same moment that talks were failing between the U.S. and Iran, Donald Trump was calling Paulo Costa a beautiful man and saying that he could be a model, and he shouldn't be fighting. He should be a model. It's like those two things being juxtaposed at the same moment in time on different parts of the world is just chef's kiss. MMA. It's the sport that keeps on giving.
That's fair. I love that.
He said, "You beautiful man. You should be a model. You shouldn't be fighting."
Yeah, I was going to bring that up if you hadn't brought it up. Anyway, Austin, we all heard your drunken love for Paulo when he faced off against Sean Strickland at UFC 302 in that 3-rounder. Oh no, wait, it was a 5-rounder, wasn't it? Anyway, what do you have to say on this one?
How dare you? How dare you? Well, here's the thing, man. Like, I think that's the Paulo Costa that I was accustomed to seeing, a guy who is more of a bully, and if you punch a bully in the face, the bully usually kind of backs off. In this case, he kind of found his bully side again, and I think that we kind of forget that during the USADA era, the secret juice, I think, was actually just IVs. Like, Johnny Hendricks got in trouble for that as well, because they were banned from using IVs for rehydrating. So he might have just been, in bad moods after weight cuts when you rehydrate, because you're not supposed to be using IVs. And now that I believe they have those back, if I'm not mistaken. So he's been back, and he's actually had 2 great performances because of it. Because he'll show up against certain guys and be like, look at his Robert Whittaker fight. Paulo Costa can show up and just kind of like be a guy in that fight. He just lost to a better fighter that was able to kind of counter him a little bit better. But he was still doing the same thing. He's been this guy who chooses when he wants to actually fight and commit to a fight. And when he's just like, yeah, no, I think I've had enough. And he just either gets his butt kicked or he just doesn't really show up to win. Like, especially look at the Barbara Vittori fight that happened like a few years back. Like Mouse was saying, he was actually doing similar shit, riding against the fence, countering a lot with powerful fucking body kicks and head kicks, and was a decent kickboxer in some of those fights. He just couldn't put it all together because he's a fucking he's the definition of a high school jock. Where he's just like out there like like he said, he Paulo Costa mogged the fat Russian. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. That's right. Because that's who he is. He's a troll. He's an online troll. He's legitimately like that dude online. And to be fair to like Murzakanov, I think what ended up happening was he took all those shots like you guys are saying. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it might have been the same side that he injured himself against when he fought, I think, Justin Jacoby, if I'm not mistaken. Because he had, I think, a previous injury with either a shoulder or something, I think on the same side. So he's up there in age. He might actually get some more issues continuing with his career if he keeps fighting like this, because you can't eat punishment like that, even if you are a decent fighter. And I think he just ate way too many of those strikes, especially some of those ones he was willing to eat to the body, even if it wasn't blocking all of them. Like, he let Paulo play his game, and I think that was the one thing you could say that Paulo's like good at, was striking. And he just allowed Paulo to just like, circle the fence. He's a little fatter now. Paulo Costa has to kind of take his time, and he's got to bring his gut in with him. He might not like that, but is that too bad? Fuck him. He loves to counter strike, and I think that's the thing you can kind of say with Murzakanov, is that he knows how to strike. He's like a jack of all trades. He's not better at striking than Paulo was, and he kept the same range. And that ending sequence, I think that's him. Both, I can't do anything anymore. I'm too injured, and the hit really hurt. So I'm just I don't know what to do. My body's reacting. You know what I mean? I think that's what that was, to be like A, injury, B, concussion, C, given like his body had just given up. You can't really blame the guy for that. He was eating the fucking powerful strikes that would have probably decapitated me if I was in there. But I gotta say, man, this division's fucking chaotic. We'll talk about it later in a minute, but the top of the division's in chaos right now. So Paulo finds himself in a very advantageous situation. I think he needs 1 or 2 more still, but not a bad start. Not a bad start.
Can't start off much better, really. Finally, onto the main event, another light heavyweight bout, but this time for the vacated light heavyweight strap between Jiri Prochazka and Carlos Ulberg. We'd already had some craziness on this card, but this fight is going to be one of the most memorable UFC fights ever. Memorable as one of, if not the biggest mistakes ever made by a UFC fighter. We've seen Triple C retire at his peak. We've seen Tony Ferguson do an unnecessary weight cut 2 weeks before he fought Justin Gaethje. And we saw Anthony Smith refuse to take a DQ win versus John Jones that cost him a title and probably millions of dollars. All of these were terrible decisions made by fighters, but nothing compares to having your opponent injured, almost beaten, and deciding that you don't want to win that way. You're going to show some mercy, and ultimately getting knocked out by the only weapon your opponent is really known for and has left. Yeah, Jiri Prochazka decided that an honourable win was all that would satisfy him, not the attitude of samurai. He should have taken the easy route to winning, but instead Jiri decided to commit seppuku and asked Ulberg to be his kaishaku and take his head. So now we have a new champion. Now we have a new champion who yet again is injured. What is it with light heavyweight? We've had Jiri and Hill both give up the belt. Will Ulberg do that? If his ACL's busted up, he's going to be out for, I would presume, most of the rest of this year, maybe part of next year. So are we going to be getting another interim belt to decide the number one contender? We'll also have to see how Powhatan does at the White House, of course. If he loses to Gan, he could return to light heavyweight. We have a resurgent Costa that we just discussed. Things are messed up, but interesting. Now, I cannot tell a lie. I was at the point of tracking Austin down and giving him the, 5 points is 5 points line. And then Ulberg sent Jiri to the land of wind and ghost, and in Team No Special, a whopping 35 points. However, I'm going to make him wait to celebrate. And let's hear from Lazy. What do you want to talk about?
Fuck you. How dare you take this from me?
What do you want to talk about regarding this fight, Lazy? Shut the fuck up, Austin.
God damn it.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Did Jiri actually show mercy? Did he, though? Because he's talking a lot about it, or at least he talked a lot about it after Joe Rogan proposed that he did, after Joe Rogan steered the ship in that direction, gave Jiri that out. Jiri seemed to think that he showed mercy. But if you go back and you watch the footage, I'm not so sure he did. Which part was the mercy? The part where he pointed down and offered to stand and bang with him, was that the mercy? Maybe, I guess that was the most merciful thing he did, because other than that, he was kicking the fucking ever living shit out of his legs once he fucking realized they were hurt. Like, he was not showing any. He wasn't showing any leniency or respect towards his legs. I don't think that was a mercy call. I think that he's just a donk. I think he just has low IQ. I think he just didn't capitalize on the moment. I think that this whole idea that he's some sort of honorable samurai spirit is bullshit. Jiri's just some dude from the Czech fucking Republic.
Come on, it's Czechoslovakia. We zip in, we pick him up, we zip right out again. We're not going to Moscow. It's Czechoslovakia. It's like going into Wisconsin.
Who was a teenager that smoked cigarettes and liked fucking kung fu movies, and now he pretends and plays fucking cosplay in the UFC, which is commonplace. That's what a lot of guys do. If that's what you want your gimmick to be, go ahead, but don't use fucking mercy as your excuse here. Don't use mercy as your fucking cop-out. What happened here was you were a fool. You were a damn fool, and you rushed in with your hands down against a wounded animal that had its back against the wall, and you got detonated on. You got completely obliterated by your opponent's best weapon, the only weapon that he had left. And immediately afterwards, to already be looking for excuses, which is what he did, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, that's bullshit. That's utter bullshit. The entire fucking build-up to this fight, all he said was, let's go for Hunt. Let's go for Hunt. Well, when the fucking Hunt was on the line, you want me to believe that you held off, that you fucking pulled back, that you saw the wounded animal and you felt remorse? Get the fuck out of here, dude. Get the fuck out of here. You got caught. You got clipped. It is what it is. Give your opponent the credit he deserves. Take the fucking loss on the nose. Man up. That's one thing in this whole situation. But the other thing here is Joe Rogan, UFC, stop fucking interviewing fighters who have just been knocked unconscious.
Yeah.
It's not a good look. It's pretty classless. These guys are in very vulnerable states. Their minds are not exactly right. They're emotional. They're dealing with feelings that we can only imagine. So maybe don't put the fucking camera on him and the spotlight on him and start asking him questions fucking 120 seconds after he was just asleep on the fucking floor. Like, the fuck are you doing? The guy was just rolling around like a fucking log in a river. Like, come on, man. And last thing I want to say here is it is tough for light heavyweight because the reality is Ulberg is going to be out, what, a minimum 6 months? At best, if he's lucky, if it's not one of the if it's not an Achilles, if it's just like an MCL or something, at worst, or he could be out over a year. And he could never be the same again. He's not young. He's a big guy. These injuries affect everyone differently, and although we've had advancements in medical science, there's still no guarantee that you're coming back from snapping all the fucking CLs you have in your leg and going to be the same guy. So, luckily for him, his style was never the most mobile, agile style to begin with, so he could very well bounce back from this. But really, I think the thing that's being most overlooked here is the guy is not really being celebrated, and he's not really being given his proper flowers for having just won the fucking light heavyweight title. Like, New Zealand has a champion. CKB has another champion. Like, there's a lot of storylines here that I feel like nobody's talking about, and we're not going to have time to get into them today, but nobody else is either. So it's just like a strange situation where it's like the focus seems to be on what's next for light heavyweight, not on what just happened.
I think it's because he's not going to fight in anytime soon, and I think it's a little bit also like the Joshua Van against Pantoja win, where it's got that stain around it almost. It would have been equally bad for Jiri in certain respects. But anyway, I have to go on to this one. Austin, you lucky bastard! I swear you've been so fluky. 10 extra points because Paddy was tough enough to take a beating, and now you pick up an extra 30 points because Jiri rolled a 1 on his fight IQ check. So let's hear it. Come on, give it us. Have you known
I am just on cloud 9 because this was like, I had struggled too, if I'm being honest, with picking a winner in this fight. I think I picked Ulberg last second by I think a KO in like the third, if I'm not mistaken. But anywho, but it was just like out of a whim because you're listening to how they're like going through, and Jury's like actually looking decent in his last 2, and you're kind of thinking to yourself like, fuck, man, Ulberg is good, but he's not really fighting like really well on a consistent pace or a consistent basis, and against some of the better names he kind of struggles against. He struggled against like a handful of guys at lightweight. I mean, he loses his first fight, and now he's on this is his 10-fight win streak, that concludes with a title fight so far that he wins in a miraculous fashion, not because he got a Hail Mary KO, but because his opponent gave him the biggest opening of all time, and he just decided to take it despite blowing up his knee. And that's the thing. I did not think he was taking mercy. In my opinion, him taking mercy would have been taking him down and then proceeding to either clinch up against the cage with him or, keeping him from standing up. Like, I think that would have probably been better. I think if he's trying to play the mercy card, because otherwise, like, why are you still striking with him? The dude is like literally falling down half the time he's standing because he's having trouble keeping his foot or weight on the back foot. It was his right leg that actually got the tendon. You could see, and I think that the crazy part is that they concentrated on when it happened, because you can see his calf muscle literally bounce because the tendon snaps back. And I don't know if it snapped in half or it was literally because it got caught, or just like that thing where like the tendon snaps backwards, and you could see it. Like, I was like, oh, I remember that pain. Oh my god, that was like the one time I've ever had to look away from a fucking injury and just like, oh, that's because I remember how that felt. But the thing that's also crazy about this is that the fact that, like, Jiri was actually leaning up with the leg kicks throughout the first round and just like not really holding back against that. And Ulberg almost seemed kind of like thrown off by it. Like he was actually doing a pretty decent game plan up until the point where he decided to rush in because like he had his opponent where he wanted him. He's making him back up, but controlling where he's going. He may eat a couple of strikes here and there, but he's not really putting himself in too much danger. He's keeping the pressure, but ultimately landing offense that's scoring. And he's probably on his way to a round winning performance after this, maybe depending if he keeps up the same game plan. But the minute he saw his opponent hurt, he's like, oh, I can play this. I have time to play with this. It's like Lazy said, he cornered an animal and the animal kind of got aggressive. And he's like, oh, I know how to talk to this Wolverine. And then the Wolverine jumps and eats your face. You know, what's that? It's like, you know what I mean? You know, it's like, I can't believe this leopard is eating my face. I can't believe this. You know what I mean? Like, I was just thrown aback by the fact that like Carlos Ulberg got more aggressive because he got injured, and the fact that Jiri was just like, I don't know how to go about this. I know, I'll keep kicking his leg because he obviously can't hit me. I can just jump in whenever I want. The fact that it was his left side hand that dropped down and he was hit on his left side by Carlos Ulberg's fucking right hand because he decided he no longer was a threat. Like he's still throwing at you. You could still have the defense. If you're so fucking worried about fucking Mercy, just fucking like head kick him or some shit. Like fucking, you don't have to put yourself with the fucking like hands down because obviously he's still throwing at you. That's like the weird thing about it was like, no, I gave him Mercy. No, this is a fight. What are we talking about here? Like, either you did the thing or you didn't do the thing because you obviously didn't do the thing because you got knocked the fuck out, you know? Like, I don't even hate Jiri, but like, god damn it, dude. Like him complaining at the end of the fight, like that was my fight. It was my fight. Like, you know, it doesn't matter, dude. It's like close is in horseshoes and hand grenades, and this is neither of those, as Jen Machi would say. You know what I mean? It's like you didn't do the thing, man, and it wasn't even due to a bad card. It was your decision making that did it. So you can't blame anybody but yourself. It is what it is. Suck it up, man. You had fucking 5 opportunities at a fucking title. What are we talking about here? You know, You've already won the title once before. You mean, and now here's the other thing too, is that this title is now cursed just because fucking Jiri Prochazka fucking started the goddamn curse, man. Like he was injured, Jamal Hill was injured. There was a draw that wasn't even given to anybody where the title fight was on the line, and now we have this. Like Carlos Ulberg is going to be out, and it's probably going to be for a fucking year, and now we won't even have a goddamn title defense. He's probably going to fight for a goddamn interim title before the fucking year's out. God damn it.
One last thing that I want to say on this, and it's really the best way to like kind of give an alternate view on what happened here with Jiri saying that, you know, he let up and he showed mercy and that the fight was his and he should get another shot. If I'm in war and I'm on a battlefield and I slaughter everyone on that battlefield, but then I walk onto a landmine and I get blown up, I don't get to have another shot at that just because I was winning the battle up until that point. I'm fucking dead. Like you walked onto a bomb.
Yeah. He does seem to have the same card as Cyril Gann, unlimited title shots. But
yeah,
anyway,
thinks he's the Diego Lopez of fucking light heavyweight.
All right. Okay, that's the main card over with. There were some fun fights on the prelims. Vicente Luque defeated Kelvin Gastelum in the first round with an anaconda choke. Matthias Gamrot killed the early energy of the card off with a grappling match. I hated this fight and was just glad when Ribovic tapped to an arm triangle choke in the second round, so I didn't have to watch all 15 minutes. But the fight we need to take a look at was the one with draft implications. Team bleeders Lupe Godinez took on Tatiana Suarez at strawweight. I was persuaded by comments from around the interwebs that Lupe had a good chance of winning the fight, and she looked great for about 2 minutes of the first round. Anyway, she hurt Suarez with a punch, actually handled her very well in the groundwork that followed. She even picked Suarez up and just threw her down to the ground. And then it all went wrong. Suarez was able to get top position, probably took the first round. Then round 2, Suarez just rinsed and repeated until she was able to sink in the rear naked choke and I believe give Lupe her first submission loss of her career. Oh well, bleeders, 5 points is 5 points. But on the good news, it is just enough to keep you in third place overall. Not sure who picked Loopy for team leader. I think it's your turn again, Austin. So what do you think of the fight and both ladies' performances?
I think that might have been Dave, if I'm not mistaken, that gave them Lupe, which was not a bad pick, to be fair. But I think the thing is that I think Lupe got excited. She's a decent fighter, man. She's not like bad. She's like, she has moments where she kind of has hiccups here and there, and she just like she lacks confidence, I think, is half the thing. You know what I mean?
She looks small to me.
Well, I mean, Tatiana's a big girl. You know what I mean? She's like, she stands tall. She's got long legs and arms. It's kind of like how Ben Askren used to be at welterweight, where he's not like exactly big, but he's a decent sized guy. You know what I mean? And especially if you're a grappler, the way that they grapple, the minute they get their hands on you, it's kind of over. That's the problem. And I think she got excited because, like you said, she actually, checks her with a really strong punch, wobbles her, and then immediately Tatiana tries to grapple. She kind of takes over the grappling, Lupe being the better grappler early on, and then just commits to the grappling afterwards. And I think that was the wrong play because Tatiana's not a great striker. She's a better grappler, better well-rounded grappler than she is a striker, right? Tatiana is not really known for her hands. Lupe probably should have kept that game going, but because she wanted to compete with her in grappling, I think that gave Tatiana the ability to bounce back and actually take over the grappling. She's a much better grappler, unfortunately, and that's kind of the where we're at in this division. The older grapplers are still holding on in this division, much like Mateus Gamrot. Shout out Mateus Gamrot. That was a great fight. I don't know what you're talking about, Mouse. Anywho, I think she messed up by trying to continue grappling. Had she not, she might have just done better. Because I mean, we've seen shorter girls in this division land with decent boxing or kickboxing and come with success. I think that was the problem here, unfortunately. Just size. That's all.
Okay. Out to add, Lazy?
Yeah, a little bit. I do have a confession to make. I actually didn't see this fight live. I didn't catch this fight when it happened live because for the first time in many a year, I actually shut the fights off right before this fight, and I took a nap. I took a nap to not out of spite or not out of fucking anything like fuck these bitches or nothing like that. I took a nap because I wanted to be rested and refreshed for Ryzen later in the night. So I did take a nap from this fight, right before this fight, up until like midway through the Pico fight. But I went back and watched the fight today, and the only thing I really want to say about this fight is, Danger Mouse, you and your people that you were watching or speaking to on the internet were right. Lupe could have won this fight and probably should have won this fight.
Well, you were one of them, to be honest. I heard you praising her.
Well, I think she made a boneheaded decision of her own and showed some bad fight IQ by not inviting Tatiana back up to her feet. I think that was just a silly choice. I think if she had kept this thing on the feet, she was probably going to spark her out. But nevertheless, she didn't. And, the Bleeders walk away with a measly 5 points. But another thing that I would like to see, but I don't think we'll see going forward from this, I want to see Fatima Klein versus Tatiana Suarez. That's a fight I would love to see.
I might be soon, dude. That might be too soon, man. I'm going to be honest.
That might be why Lazy wants to see it now. As Dave snipes Fatima away from him.
Little of this, little of that. Column A, column B.
All right. Topology time and some familiar names again at the top. In third place, MMA Artist with 365 points. In second, our pal Crossover MMA with 390 points. But in first, I've labelled him the Hawaiian Tsunami because he just cannot be stopped. Yet again, it's Daz Riccio with 400 points. So well done, mate. Another win for you this week. It shows you how crazy that card was when Daz was the only person out of the entire Discord to pick over 50% of the fights correctly. And even then, it was only 7 out of 12. I suppose we should mention that Gable Stevenson has been signed back to the UFC. So any idea who we might face, you guys?
I'm hearing it's going to be an absolute fucking can.
It should be.
Like somebody
I wanted it to
really
be
bad.
Josh Hokit, to be fair.
They're not going to be Hokit yet.
Did we kind of touched on it a little bit during the Hokit fight, but Hokit is now rebooked immediately to take on Derrick Lewis at the White House. So
yeah, also true.
I hate that.
Interesting.
I
Isn't
hate
he
that.
fighting at International
I hate that.
Fight Week?
Yeah, that's what Gable's fighting. Yeah, IFW. They'll probably give him somebody like a Max Jimenez or a fucking somebody really bad, Thomas Peterson or something like that.
Like Taito Ivasa. Just to kill him
Maybe.
off. Anyway, he was also there with his mentor, who apparently said he was considering coming out of retirement. I'm not even going to mention his name. Just shut the fuck up. No one cares. I guess then we just have one more thing to do, and that's to rate the card. I'm going to let make Austin go first. So how are you going to score this one, mate?
That was a kind of weird fight. Fights all around, but it was entertaining most of the way through. There's a certain section that I hate every time they go to Florida, but that's neither here nor there. Whatever. But the other thing too is that they gave Cub a very good send off, so you got to give it an 8. I think it's an 8 is appropriate. Also, I laughed very hard at the main event. This is funny to me. I know Jensen cheers right now, so that is what it is. 8 for me. I'll give it an 8. Should be lower, but
All right, I'll go next then. This was officially my worst night ever of picks on Tapology. I went back and checked. 5 out of 12, although one of those was a draw. The next worst card I've ever had was 6 out of 14, but I did score more points on that card. Nonetheless, I'm going to try and be fair with my score here. I think I didn't enjoy it quite as much as last week. The best fight for me on this one was a Hokit fight, which was just hilarious and fun and bloody and all the rest of it. So I'm going to go 7.834. That ties into the scores I've given for the last 2 weeks, by the way. Anyway, Lazy, give your pronouncement of doom, and then I can close us out on the show.
Well, instead of talking about the event, I'm going to take my time real quickly to say the Ryzen event last night, Ryzen Landmark 13, was phenomenal. Really great night of fights. Shout out to Shadolayev, who is now 18-0. Kid's 25 years old. If he ever gets a chance to come into the UFC, he's going to destroy and kill everyone. Shout out to Daz, who's probably the only other person listens to this show that watched Ryzen. But hey, that's my thought on that. This card, it was good. It was good. I was not excited, admittedly. I was not hyped. Having trouble getting my jollies off for the UFC lately. This card did have some name value. Several of the fights did. They did provide. So, yeah, I'm tempted to do something a little bit different.
Oh God!
I think I'm going to. Instead of giving a number grade, I'm going to give a letter grade.
I'm not sure I'm going to allow that.
Let him bounce. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. We're getting something positive. I can tell.
Okay. All right. No.
Dave could translate it into a number.
Yeah, we could do both. I could pick a letter that kind of looks like a number. I'll give it a B plus or an 8.1.
Lazy throwing in the decimal point.
It's so abstract. I love it. Shit.
Okay, then that wraps up this Miami adventure. We leave the Florida Everglades and head up north to find some muddy water in the second sunniest city in Canada. The UFC travels to Winnipeg for a card headlined by welterweights Gilbert Burns, and we like him a lot, Mike Malott. I can just see Lazy champing at the bit to start writing his intro for that superb card, or maybe he's just grinded his teeth. Anyway, we better get the hell out of here. They've been Lazy to Bed and Austin. I've been Danger Mouse, and an hour of their, or maybe even our company is enough to drive anyone to drink. See you next week, you bleeders. Cheers.
Fucking Canada.
Yeah.
That's pretty close on the hour as well there.
Holy fuck. Oh, we didn't even talk about fucking Pico. Oh, fuck you. How fucking dare you?
Why is Austin full screen? You fucking the star of the show.
You put me here. I didn't do shit.
Did I?
I'm just here. I exist, man. I have no control over what happens with the production. As you can tell, I'm not good at it.
You are good at it.
Just Austin Radio.
Given the technical difficulties with the last time Austin attempted to do a show on his own.
I know. Just that with me spinning around is probably like the thing that you should have every time we have technical difficulties.
It's not a bad idea. Flip it down.
Hit you with that. Then, of course, there was Elvis. Elvis was so much more than your ordinary security alligator. Too bad he finally grew as big as he looked in the catalog. Mom and Dad made me send him back to Florida.
Crockett! Hey! Officer Tubbs, say hi to Elvis. Currently, he's a watchdog and resident dope sniffer of the St. Vitus Dance.
Oh, fuck you! No! No, you cannot pull that card on me! No!